Item 2, absence of members.
We apologies for Councillor Wayne Prentice and Councillor Bugle needlessly substituted, and apologies for Councillor Anne Hutton and Councillor Fred Barrow substituting.
Agenda item 3, does anybody voice any pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests? No. Thank you. We have no public questions, we have no members' items. Thank you. That takes us on to agenda item 6. Customer services transformation. We have Mr. Murphy with us, who's going to introduce the report.
Thank you. This report stems from a review of revenues and benefits. We're going to talk in terms of making the savings required by the medium-term financial strategy. In the event, we've actually made about £500,000 saving in total. Part of the process of making those savings was a sort of streamlining of the management structure and reduce the number of managers down from 7 to 3. But because of the high risk associated with revenue benefits as a service, and also sort of managing that change process, and also because obviously we were dealing with various changes in the welfare reform agenda, we actually retained the services of the floor managers for a period of time in what we call a transition team. That work's now been done. I'm happy to say that the collection rates in both business rates and council tax are the highest they've been for many years. The backlog in housing benefits is well, there isn't one. So the change has actually been successful in that sense, but actually we do now need to complete that review by making redundant those four posts. We already know about it, they were all kind of aware of the process we were going through. And indeed, I would say we're kind of grateful that they had that extra time with the transition team to see through the changes. So that's just important.
Any questions? Councillor Barnet?
Yeah, if I come back to one thing, well, these changes are part of the contract, means it comes through as part of the contract you see, or as the downsizing of the union anyway. Because obviously we've just been told, or just got into today, that meetings being cancelled because the judicial review is putting things off, and surely the same applies to the transition scheme. And secondly, one of the reasons is welfare training. Do you actually think there are going to be less welfare trainings over the next couple of years? Surely the same reason to do that remains.
This is a review that will happen regardless of the outsourcing. There's no connection here between the outsourcing and this particular review. This was a review that was required in order to make the savings, to meet the budget savings for the current financial year. So there's a requirement to do that. Obviously, the fact that we have done that, leads to a beneficial effect, because obviously the baseline that goes into the contract is lower for 10 years, but that's all incidental maybe. The savings would have to have been made in any event. I'm confident that we have the capacity in place to deal with the welfare reform changes. We're well on target now. We're actually at the point of commissioning Silver to do all the changes to bits that we have to do. So I'm confident that, and indeed the transition team here wouldn't necessarily have the right skill sets to have taken us through the next technical set of changes, which are kind of much more IT related. They're much more sort of project management changes. But we do have, I'm confident that's on track, and we have the capacity in place to currently deal with that.
Any further questions? Yes, report agreed. Thank you.
Chair, can I just intersperse here and say the general point that Councillor Rawlings made at the beginning about the fact that we've all had this email about judicial review, which means that we don't in fact know if that's successful. The structure will be totally different. I would just like a legal ruling on what we can and what we can't decide at this meeting.
Just to clarify that, of course you can't have a legal ruling because the court...
I'm awfully sorry, Richard, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I was even trying them up. I mean, I suppose it's awfully difficult to be definitive about it until the court decides. I mean, you can't, I mean, if this doesn't go ahead, if the court says you've got to chuck it away, clearly there will be devastating redundancies and cutbacks in services. I mean, there can be no denying it. but it won't have anything to do with this particular matter that we're deciding. And meanwhile, the court case is likely to be decided relatively quickly.
Mr. Thomas?
And Chairman, as well as the leader's comments, this service needs reform. Whatever happens to it, whether it gets outsourced or whether we keep it in-house, it needs reform anyway. In fact, the management layer is too big. We've delayed the management, and we've sort of reconfigured the team so it can be as efficient as it can in-house. That's all we've done. Isn't that right, Bill?
Yeah.
So it doesn't affect what's in this paper today. The need to do it.
Well, can we have this resolved to legal?
We've had the question answered by the leader.
Because that's what we need to do.
I just concur with what Councillor Dan Thomas just said. This restructuring is actually already taking place. This is the end of the process and it isn't dependent upon whether or not this service is ultimately outsourced. And therefore, what is happening in the judicial review has no bearing on this report itself. If you think that there are other reports that come before you, there may be some bearing, and there's nothing to stop you still agreeing with proposals, and if the judicial review strikes down on the outsourcing, then you will review your decisions in light of getting the ultimate decision of the High Court. But business has to continue. In the meantime, Council has to run.
Right, we've agreed to go on to agenda item 7, which is senior officer and health structures for children's services. We have Kate Mann with us. Second report, please.
Thank you. I bring this report in the name of the Interim Chief Executive and Head of Paid Service. Obviously Andrew Travis is here and we'll both be happy to take any questions on this report. When this committee in April of last year agreed the senior management structures for the Council, it noted that a further review of the structures for children's services needed to be undertaken later in the year and proposals were brought forward to this committee. That further review is needed because prior to, just a couple of weeks before the committee meeting last year, the government published statutory guidance in respect of the role of the Director of Children's Services, and the Chief Executive wanted to take the opportunity to look at that guidance in the light of the new senior management structures that were being created, to make sure that we had the leadership arrangements that were fit for purpose to deliver on our early intervention and prevention service, and also meet the changing requirements in respect of our relationship with schools. Over the last 8 months, we've been in dialogue both with schools through work on our education strategy, looking at the changing role of the local authority and what is needed in respect of the leadership responsibilities that we have. We've also taken stock of our progress that we've made in respect of safeguarding, looking at the outcomes from the Ofsted inspection, which took place in 2012, looking at the progress we've made around Monroe, and where we are in delivery of the Troubled Families agenda. Over the last 8 months as well, I've had the opportunity to combine being in the Director of Adult Social Care and Health role with the Interim Director of Children's Services role. And so these proposals have been informed by my experience of having been doing that role for the last 8 months. And it has become clear to me that we need to make sure that we've got equal levels of leadership capacity to manage both that family services agenda, early intervention, effective safeguarding, providing the leadership for wider family services such as libraries, which will be coming into children's services, alongside the right capacity to lead and support schools during this very changing period of time, and to make sure that we have a clear eye on the emerging skills agenda, because ultimately education should be about equipping our young people to compete successfully in our local workplace. So this proposal looks at taking forward leadership arrangements for both family and education and skills through the establishment of 2 director posts, and has regard to the statutory guidance by having the Director of Children's Services role formally incorporated within the post of Director of People. The proposals do not increase the number of senior managers in the senior management structure, but seek to make sure that we've got the leadership capacity in the right place going forward. Be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Councillor Williams.
Yeah, a couple. I'm a bit confused by this report in one way. It says that it didn't put through all the changes, was waiting for the government to clarify whether they would be involved, basically, or Director of Children's Services. And under risk management, it said, all right, the government said something, and that's explained in the legal issues. The legal issues refer to the 2004 Act, the Children's Act, and basically said it's the same as it was before. Now there was no change. And that means there has to be a director responsible for both education and social care for children's services. So we've got this. We have to do this report because of the government advice. The government advises you have to have a single person responsible for education and social care. Where's the drunken logic that then says, so therefore we divide into two different service delivery units rather than keep them as one service delivery unit? I just can't understand thinking through how one led to another. I'm not saying it's a wrong decision, but I can't work it out.
The proposal is clear that there will be a single person with responsibility for education and skills and for children's social care in line with statutory guidance, and that will be the Director for People. What the distinction is that there will not be a separate, sitting on the Strategic Commissioning Board, Director for People and a separate Director for Children's Services, but that role will come together. And that's the change from what was the original proposals that went forward to the April last year committee.
The other change, the other change is the having a, rather than having a children's services, we've got an education and skills and the family services as two delivery units. Is that change? I can't see how that flows through from having one director. You know.
Well, in any organisation, it can feel that different parts of teams are in different silos, even if they're still in the umbrella of the children's service. And one of my observations of actually having been working in the service is that it is a very large area, and that on occasions people identify more with social care than mother with education. So I don't believe that this change will undermine the principles around placing the child at the centre of what we do, focusing on those 5 every child matter outcomes that led to the creation of a single, to the role of the Director of Children's Services. Indeed, both the Education and Skills Director and the Family Services Director will be members of the Children's Trust Board, will be members of the Children's Safeguarding Board, will continue to be co-located, sitting and working in the same area. But one of the things that I draw on that shaped these proposals that were developed in conjunction with the Chief Executive, with the lead member, is that the balance of time that gets spent in managing the complexity of the different aspects of the children's service is quite tricky to manage. So if I think about, for me personally, having had the experience of doing this role for the last 8 months, a very significant proportion of my time is spent being in managing our relationships with schools. Set piece meetings, governors meetings, directors meetings with heads, getting out and about, explaining, trying to work through what this changing nature has been. And actually that has then meant that there has been perhaps less time than ideally I would like to see, actually having been involved in some of the early intervention and prevention services. And if we look at the Council's strategic agenda of the importance of those services, and together with this changing educational landscape, it's been our view on balance that actually we've needed to strengthen that leadership capacity for both of those agendas, rather than trying to think that it is possible to combine that in a single role.
Okay. One follow-up. First of all, thank you for the reassurance, because the cynic in me was thinking it's easier to set up education services if there are social workers involved. The only other comment I've got is the one that I made last time, and I do sincerely believe this. I am still concerned that the role of safeguarding is to scrutinise what the council does, and therefore to me it should be part of assurance. And nobody else would be involved in. But I am worried that there is a position where somebody's got a statutory role to scrutinise and to audit what the council is doing, is also reporting to the council, and I'm worried about that lack of independence on safeguarding, which would have been preserved if it was put in assurance. I know we've agreed the structure and it can't change, but that's a conscience thing for me, that I do feel I have to make that comment.
Councillor Rollins, I understand the issues around making sure that the council is effectively discharging its safeguarding responsibilities, and of course that are some of the core accountabilities of the Director of Children's Services and the lead member for Children's Services. So this has been an area of quite a considerable amount of discussion in developing these proposals. Can I draw your attention to paragraph 4.7, which does talk about there being an agreed protocol that will underpin the implementation of these arrangements agreed with the Assurance Director. You'll be aware that the Safeguarding Board also conducts multi-agency audits that sit outside of the Council's standard audit programme. We're looking at how those get brought together with what Assurance is doing so that we can have confidence going forward that in this new arrangement, as we do have now, that safeguarding is at the heart of our practice and that all of our partners are committed to making sure that we are taking our safeguarding responsibilities very seriously. So each year, as part of this protocol, there will be work that is led by Assurance looking at our safeguarding, the discharge of our safeguarding responsibilities.
And also, if I should reassure and emphasise to people, safeguarding is actually fundamentally the responsibility of the members come to finish. And most of us have been along to the training for this, and we've all taken this all on board very, very seriously. I mean, ultimately, the buck comes back to stop with us on that.
Thank you. You have amendments to make in paragraph 4.4, on the fifth line down. We need to take out the legal word further. It says at the moment, sought to ensure that frontline services are not further destabilised. It should read not destabilised. Any further questions? No. Is the report agreed? Thank you. Generalised complete and conduct. We have Sarah with us.
Thank you, Chairman. The paper that we brought for committee tonight sets out some proposed changes to the Council's Code of Conduct. And the committee members are well aware that the Code of Conduct sets out the standards of behaviour and integrity that are expected from all employees and can be used sitting above HR policies and procedures. This paper is a joint collaboration between HR and CAT, so I have to take with me tonight as well. The changes in this paper are an interim measure pending an assurance-led review of the Council's constitution. The view is that what we will attempt to do in the changes to the Council's constitution is to bring all HR references into one place in the form of HR regulations, and then that will be underpinned by a much shorter and more succinct code of conduct, which I'm sure everybody will welcome because it's becoming quite unwieldy. In terms of the background to this, the Code of Conduct necessarily evolves over time as the context changes in which it will be operated. So what we've brought forward tonight is some changes in terms of the way personal relationships should be declared, that there are changes in terms of where people are being solicited for or soliciting themselves for employment with any partner organisations. The fact that employees must set up ventures on their own account using Barnet's contacts and information in a way that causes detriment to the Barnet Council. Process for, in terms of social media, and what is acceptable and unacceptable. Redefining the restraint of trade clause, which was probably inoperable as it had been previously expressed, and reserves the right to take action. And then also deals with guidance for council workers who are both residents about how they might express their opinions. And then it also deals with changes to gigs and hospitality.
Thank you, Sarah. And the process is changing for declaring all offers of gifts and hospitality and sponsorship. The new process will be overseen by the Council's monitoring officer and will be managed centrally by the Council's governance service. There's an introduction of a central register for all gifts accepted or offered that are over £25, and this register will be maintained and will be published and subject to inspection. There is a new process of where we've set a financial level below which employees are able to accept minor gifts. There's enhanced guidance for dealing with gifts when they've been offered from elderly, confused or vulnerable people. Inclusion of guidance on giving and receiving sponsorship. Tighter wording around conflicts of interest and declaration thereof. There's introduction of a new standardised template and declaration form and a process for completing that and publishing that form. And there's significant reference to the Council's bribery policy statement and procedure which forms part of the Council's accountable framework and the consequences of failing to adhere to that which could result in gross misconduct and criminal investigation. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Under 5.11, it says even if the gift isn't accepted, it should still be registered. Is this a new policy? And if so, why have we moved this?
Yeah, we've moved this. This is a new amendment to the policy, and so we've moved this so we have full transparency around gifts that are offered. This is where it ties in with our new bribery policy procedure. And so that we have a full picture of gifts that are offered, even if they're not accepted. It's part of our transparency agenda, and just so that we can have a clearer picture of what's going on within the organisation. Also protects any employees if they've been offered a gift and refused it, if they've declared that we have a record of that. And it's a way of the policy, the revision in the policy and that particular amendment is also something that we want our partner organisations to be aware of, so that they don't offer any such gifts or hospitality outside of our policy.
Is this standard through other councils and other organisations?
This is standard through some local authorities, yes, and it's also standard in most local authorities' anti-bribery procedure. Not sure if you're aware, but there was a new piece of legislation that came in, which was the Bribery Act, and as a result of that we introduced a new policy, and one of the recommendations from CIPFA, which is our professional standards board that we work to as the corporate anti-fraud team, is that we introduce that policy, we introduce those changes, and then we update our gifts and hospitality policy so they reflect each other.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. In response to Councillor Ramsey's question, I know certainly my company, I don't know work in finance, but a lot of companies out there have this policy and have had it for some time now, and I know that the Bribery Act has also changed that. It's tightening things up. But can I just ask, those are other sort of external factors as to why we've updated and refreshed this policy. But could I ask, has there been any other incidences or any increased incidences or reports to either to Claire or to HR regarding other issues in this? Or we just use the Bribery Act and that updating to do a wholesale change? Or have there been other incidences within the council that this committee should be aware of?
Good question.
There's nothing that has caused these changes. This has been a matter of tidying and making sure the code of conduct particularly is fit for purpose in terms of the outsourcing partner organisations and everybody about the standards that would be expected come the transfer date.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. And I think it's important this is updated. This is going to appear a very naive question because in many ways I am very naive. On the risk management issues, 4.5, 4.6 on page 33, it mentions two new things, the soliciting and the restraint control. Fine, this is an improvement. But this is a naive question. Does that mean that all the time we've been having these big negotiations with outside bodies, these rules weren't in place? In other words, there could have been soliciting or being solicited for employment, and there could have been movement between competitor organisations. In other words, is this stable door, halting, etc.? You know.
The process for management was that people who were involved in those processes had to sign conflicts of interest statements.
About three, I think.
Yeah, only three.
But would that conflict of interest include being solicited for or soliciting for employment? You know, have we had any examples of movement between staff and think why this has been going on, because if so, it is a worry.
Once we entered into the formal process, no, there haven't been any examples of that.
Could I just ask a separate question, which is on the social media part of it? It basically says staff aren't allowed to, and this is different in a lot of things, and I think this is quite right, that as council employees they cannot use the social media to express opinions and so on. That aren't council policy. And then it says staff who are residents must make it clear from their communications that their personal views. What I don't get from that is, if they're saying their personal views can they criticise, or will it still be the fact that they're council employees, they can't criticise even though they say it's their personal view? I don't think that's quite clear. Sorry, it's page 47 of that paragraph.
That's dealing with social media in terms of where people are commenting in their capacity as an employee of Barnet.
So just make it halfway down, it said then staff or residents must make it clear that it's their personal opinion. What I get confused, say you're a member of staff and you want to criticise something, you can't do it unless you live in Barnet and say I live in Barnet and therefore this is my personal view and I can criticise. Or can't you criticise anyone? You know, with the residency doesn't make a difference.
We've deliberately written into this paper that if employees are residents of Barnet, then obviously they have a democratic right to be able to speak as residents, but they must do that in a private capacity, not in a LDB capacity.
Right, but all it means is that needs to be clarified in whatever mode they use. They have to clarify the personal capacity.
Whatever, so, okay, I understand.
I think Chairman as well with this, it depends what they're criticising. If they're criticising, you know, I don't know, they think there should be more playground provision in the park behind their house, then fair enough. You know, that's a resident view, but I think this is more tackled at people going online and saying, oh, my boss is an idiot and all that sort of stuff. And actually then, then you know, their friends see that, and that reflects on the council, it reflects on the people. That person could take legal action as a result. And then, you know, this, I think, that's what we're trying to get at, really, rather than sort of say if you're a resident, you can't complain about something the council's involved in. Otherwise, as you say, we won't be able to say anything. So I think that's what this is getting at. And yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify one.
Any further questions?
Just through you again. If it's a committee, what's the time of this coming in and how will those staff be informed of it?
So this will come into force after this committee has been through directors and through trade union process as well for any comment. So this was the final part of the consultation process. So we will be moving to publish this in the next week or so.
Great.
Right, I think this is sorry, two governing bodies. You've got a schedule in front of you. If you want to know the Barnet Park School Council by version, you need to be to schedule forward again. And that also applies to Oakley School, where things like to be considered. Bugle Nursery, Mrs. Last and Mrs. Renton have agreed going forward again. Have you got any nominations? No. Has Palmer have you?
I haven't got any further nominations, but there are several errors on this, and the last time we pointed out an error which hasn't been corrected on this. There are further ones. Naval Down School, Council Monsieur Surgery and Conservative. Which
You haven't told that, so
Could be a Conservative nomination. We had one of our people are down as a Labour. And I think we find it probably would have been a Conservative nomination.
yeah, that's the next one. Yeah, Dinesh Ryan is Conservative. Ali hasn't got anything there, but he is Labour.
No, Billy Sharma is certainly Conservative, but he's my chairman of the board.
That's what I said, he's Conservative.
yeah, it's got down next to his name.
Which was Edgeware School, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That would be the Labour nomination.
it's always been a Conservative.
Yeah, sorry.
It's what you query, right?
It's previously on
What are you querying?
there's one Councillor surgery that's wrongly listed, Orion Primary School, Dinesh Sharma is put down as Labour, he's Conservative, and Ali should be ready to put down as Labour. And finally on Woodcroft Primary School, it seems to suddenly, where I am staying on, Councillor Turner seems something suddenly to be on there. I'm not aware that he's only on there, and that position, because it is a Labour one, as far as I'm aware, is Steve Bernard, not Councillor Turner.
Yeah, I'm surprised at that, because Woodcroft is certainly not an article on the board.
Well, he certainly hasn't been for a meeting since 2009.
We'll check that one out, actually.
Correct.
That one I will imagine as well.
At a previous meeting I substituted because there was some confusion between this version of the nominations and that of the children's service, or the schools. Has that been sort of reconciled now?
Yes, we had a meeting with Sarah Beaumont and
But we've come up with this one, which I would imagine is wrong. Okay, we will have another look at that, and if needs be, I'll have a meeting with Sarah and Mary. We have one challenge, and that is on Barnet Park School. We have Labour nomination, Councillor Grace, Maridis, and Councillor Barry Banjo. Those in favour of the Conservative nominations, please show. And those in favour of Councillor Grace, please show. Right, okay, so Councillor Barry stays on Barnet Park School. That's it, thank you. Agenda item 10.
Sorry, Chairman, if you don't mind, can I just... this is my personal view. I don't actually think the council should get involved in putting political governorships or schools and the schools to select their own. I think this whole process is very time-consuming for officers. I think when I sat on the governors' committee, it hasn't been partisan actually, and people have got on with it. And the Localism Act, is there any powers for councils, if they so wish, to stop this and to just let governors' bodies select their own people? I don't mind the local authority putting governors forward. Do they have to be done on a political basis is my question. I think that's just saying out loud, for officers go away and perhaps look up. But I do think this is all very time consuming, and is it really needed? I don't think, the political running of schools is something we want to be supporting really.
Comments? Right, agenda item 10. We cover those. Is this agreed?
Yeah.
Agreed? Thank you very much. Well, I have one, it's not exactly an urgent item, but we have got a query, Councillor Lambs has brought up about the music service. If you'd like to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask for a report to come back to the next committee the next meeting of this committee. There was a lot of agreement last time round and supporting it moving to a charitable status, and we did ask at the time for regular updates on how that was going, and I'd like to ask for a report to come back to the next meeting.
Okay. That's agreed. Yeah, we would like to know what's happening. If the officers can arrange this. Thank you very much. That's it. Thank you very much.